Behind me. Now! The 17-year-old's voice cracked like thunder across the park as Mac-10s emerged from car windows. Caleb Marsh had 3 seconds to choose. Run, like he always did, or throw himself between the bullets and an 8-year-old girl he barely knew. He chose wrong. Or maybe he chose right for the first time in his life. 3 rounds tore through his body as he covered Riley Torres and her mother. By sunrise, over 1,000 bikers would stand guard outside his hospital room, and the men who shot him would realize they'd made a fatal mistake. Before we dive into Caleb's story, hit that subscribe button and stay until the end, then comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The truck stop coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but Caleb Marsh drank it anyway because it was hot and he was cold. He sat in the corner booth at Rusty's Garage and Diner, making 1 cup last 3 hours while he waited for the morning rush to end. The owner, Rusty Jenkins, pretended not to notice. That was their arrangement. Caleb worked off the books. Rusty paid cash. Nobody asked questions. "You gonna drink that or just hold it?" Rusty called from behind the counter, his voice gravelly from 40 years of cigarettes. "Drinking it," Caleb said quietly. He was always quiet. Quiet meant invisible, and invisible meant safe. At 17, Caleb had mastered the art of taking up no space, making no sound, leaving no impression. 6 months on the run had taught him that the world didn't notice what it didn't want to see. The bell above the door chimed. Caleb's eyes flicked up, always checking exits, always watching faces. A big man walked in, leather vest covered in patches, boots heavy on the linoleum. Behind him came a woman with dark hair pulled back, and a little girl wearing a backpack covered in unicorn stickers. "Morning, Rusty," the man said, his voice deep and friendly. "Got time for an oil change?" "For you, Jake?" "Always." Rusty wiped his hands on a rag. "Bring her around back." The little girl, maybe 8 years old, stared at Caleb with the unblinking curiosity of children. "Why are you sitting in the dark corner?" "Riley, don't bother people," the woman said gently. "I'm not bothering him. I'm asking him a question." Caleb looked down at his coffee. "I like this corner." "Why?" "Riley," the woman started. "It's quiet," Caleb said. The girl nodded like this made perfect sense. "I like quiet too. My dad's motorcycle is really loud." "That's enough, baby," the woman said, steering Riley toward a different booth. But she looked back at Caleb with kind eyes, the way his mother used to look at stray cats. It made something in his chest hurt. Caleb watched them through his peripheral vision while pretending to read a dog-eared paperback he'd found in a gas station bathroom. The man, Jake, came back inside smelling like motor oil and sat with his family. They ordered pancakes and bacon. The little girl talked non-stop about her school project on butterflies. The woman, must be Jake's wife, laughed at something Riley said, and the sound was warm and real. Caleb couldn't remember the last time he'd heard laughter like that. "Kid," Rusty appeared beside his booth. "Alternator job just came in. You want the work?" "Yeah." Caleb stood immediately, leaving exact change for the coffee on the table. "You eat today?" "I'm fine." "That wasn't the question." Rusty jerked his head toward the kitchen. "Martha made too many biscuits. You know how she gets." They both knew Martha had made exactly the right number of biscuits, but Caleb was too hungry to argue. He followed Rusty to the kitchen, ate standing up, then went to work on the alternator. His hands moved with precision learned from necessity. YouTube videos watched on library computers. Practice on junked cars behind the truck stop. Hours of figuring things out because there was nobody to teach him. "You're good at this," a voice said. Caleb spun around. Jake stood in the garage doorway watching him work. "Just doing the job," Caleb said, turning back to the engine. "Rusty says you've been helping out for a few weeks now." Month and a half. Where are you staying? Caleb's shoulders tensed. Questions were dangerous. Around? Around where? Does it matter? Jake was quiet for a moment. No, I guess it doesn't. He walked closer, peering at the engine. Iron Brotherhood, by the way. That's my club. You see any of us around, we're good people. You need anything, you can ask. I'm fine. Yeah, you said that already. Jake pulled out a business card, set it on the workbench. Number's on there anyway. After Jake left, Caleb threw the card in the trash. Then, 10 minutes later, he fished it out and put it in his pocket. He didn't know why. The days started to blur together in the way they did when you had no permanent place to be. Caleb worked at Rusty's, slept in an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, kept his backpack ready to run at any moment. Everything he owned fit in that backpack. 2 changes of clothes, his mother's driver's license, the only picture he had of her, a knife, and $1,247 in cash from 6 months of odd jobs. Jake's family came back to Rusty's 3 days later. This time, the woman, Sandra, he heard Jake call her, brought Riley inside while Jake talked to Rusty about something in the parking lot. "You're still here," Riley announced, sliding into the booth across from Caleb uninvited. "Riley Marie Torres. What did I say about boundaries?" Sandra sighed, but she didn't drag Riley away. "He doesn't mind," Riley said confidently. "Do you mind?" Caleb looked at the little girl. She had grass stains on her jeans and a Band-Aid on her elbow with cartoon dogs on it. "I guess not." "Good. I have a question." "Riley," Sandra warned. "It's just one question. Can you fix bikes? Like kid bikes?" Caleb shrugged. "Probably." "Mine has a wobbly wheel, and Dad says he'll fix it this weekend, but this weekend is really far away, and I want to ride it now." "Riley, this young man is working. He doesn't have time to—" "I can look at it," Caleb heard himself say. The words surprised him. Riley's face lit up like Christmas. "Really?" "If it's just the wheel, it's probably just loose spokes. 5-minute fix." "See, Mom? 5 minutes!" Sandra looked at Caleb carefully, that same searching look from before. "You don't have to do this. It's fine." And somehow, it was. 20 minutes later, Caleb was in the parking lot with Riley's purple bike, tightening spokes while the little girl narrated every thought that entered her head. "My friend Madison says purple is for babies, but I think Madison is wrong because purple is the best color. Do you have a favorite color?" "Not really," Caleb said, spinning the wheel to check the alignment. "Everyone has a favorite color. You just have to think about it." "Blue, I guess." "What kind of blue? Sky blue or ocean blue or just blue?" "Okay, but that's not very specific." Caleb almost smiled. Almost. "Dark blue." "Like nighttime?" "Yeah, like nighttime." "That's my second favorite color. We have good taste." Sandra watched from the diner window, her arms crossed. Jake appeared beside her, following her gaze. "That's the kid I told you about," Jake said quietly. "Something's not right with his situation." "You think he's a runaway?" "I know he is. Look at him, wearing the same 3 shirts on rotation. Jumpy as hell when anyone gets close, doing cash work under the table. Kid's running from something." "Should we call someone?" Jake shook his head slowly. "System's probably what he's running from. You call CPS, they'll just put him back wherever he came from. Look how good he is with Riley. You see his face when she talks? Kid's starving for normal." "So what do we do?" "We keep an eye on him. We make sure he's safe. We don't push." Jake paused. "And we definitely don't trust the wrong people." The warning in his voice made Sandra look at him sharply. "What's going on, Jake?" "Club business. I'll tell you later." Outside, Caleb finished with the bike. Riley immediately hopped on and rode circles around the parking lot, yelling about how it was perfect, completely perfect. "Thank you," Sandra said to Caleb. "Really, she's been asking about that wheel for 2 weeks." "It's fine." "Do you like barbecue?" The question caught Caleb off guard. "What?" "We're having a cookout this Saturday, Riley's birthday. Nothing fancy, just burgers and cake. You should come." Every instinct screamed, "No. Don't get close. Don't let people see you. Don't stay anywhere long enough to matter." "I have to work," Caleb said. "Rusty closes early on Saturdays." "I don't know where you live," Sandra smiled. "Jake left you his card, didn't he? Address is on there." She paused. "You don't have to come, but we'd like it if you did." She didn't wait for an answer, just called Riley back and left. Caleb stood in the parking lot for a long time, Jake's business card heavy in his pocket, trying to remember the last time anyone had invited him anywhere. That night, in the warehouse, Caleb spread his mother's driver's license on the concrete floor and studied her face in the beam of his flashlight. Jennifer Marsh, 5'6", brown hair, brown eyes, organ donor. The picture was 7 years old. She'd been sober when they took it, her smile almost real. "You'd tell me this is stupid," Caleb said to the picture. "You'd say don't trust anybody. Don't let them get close. Everybody leaves." His mother had been good at leaving. First, she left for pills, then for needles, then for good in an ambulance that took her body away while Caleb sat in a social worker's office filling out forms. He'd been 14. They'd sent him to his first foster home that night. He'd run from 3 different placements before he turned 17 and stopped running to anywhere, just running away. "But that little girl fixed my bike," he told his mother's picture. "And nobody's hit me in 6 weeks. And I'm so tired of sleeping on concrete." The picture didn't answer. It never did. Saturday came with perfect blue skies. Caleb told himself he wouldn't go to the cookout. Then he told himself he'd just walk by to see where they lived. Then he told himself he'd just stay for 10 minutes to be polite. He followed the address to a small house on Maple Street with a yard full of motorcycles and people. At least 30 adults milled around, all wearing leather vests with the same patch, Iron Brotherhood MC. Kids ran through the sprinkler. Music played from outdoor speakers. The smell of grilling meat made Caleb's stomach growl. He almost turned around. "You came!" Riley appeared out of nowhere, wearing a birthday crown made of paper and glitter. "Mom! Mom! Caleb came!" Every head turned. Caleb wanted to sink into the ground. Sandra emerged from the crowd, her smile genuine. "I'm glad you're here. Come on, I'll get you a burger." "I'm not hungry," Caleb lied. "Then you can stand there and watch everyone else eat, but that seems boring." She gestured for him to follow. Jake stood at the grill, flipping burgers with the focus of a surgeon. When he saw Caleb, he nodded. "Heard you fixed Riley's bike. She hasn't stopped talking about it." "It was just loose spokes." "Still, you made her day." Jake slid a burger onto a plate, added chips and a pickle. "Here." "I said I wasn't, and I'm saying eat the damn burger." There was no meanness in Jake's voice, just certainty. Caleb took the plate. For the next 2 hours, he stood at the edge of the party, watching. Riley opened presents. Her excitement over a new bike helmet was infectious. The bikers told loud stories and laughed louder. Kids chased each other. Someone started a water balloon fight. Nobody made Caleb talk. Nobody asked where he came from. Nobody pushed. It felt like the first safe breath he'd taken in 3 years. "You doing okay?" Sandra appeared beside him, holding a piece of birthday cake. "Yeah." "Riley wants you to see her new helmet. It has unicorns." "That's good." Sandra laughed. You don't have to like unicorns. She just wants to show you. She paused. Jake says you're working at Rusty's. Just helping out. That's good work. Rusty's a good man. She hesitated. If you ever need anything, a meal, a place to do laundry, someone to talk to, we're here. Okay? Caleb's throat felt tight. Why? Why what? Why are you being nice to me? Sandra's expression softened. Because you fixed my daughter's bike. Because you look like you could use some friends. Because that's what decent people do. She touched his shoulder gently. You don't have to earn kindness, Caleb. You just have to accept it. She walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing there with something warm and terrifying growing in his chest. He stayed until the sun started setting. Riley showed him her unicorn helmet 3 times. Jake taught him the difference between a Harley and an Indian motorcycle. A biker named Marcus taught him a card trick. Another biker, a woman with silver hair and a leather vest, gave him a to-go container of leftover barbecue. For later, she said. Growing boy needs to eat. When Caleb finally left, Jake walked him to the street. You know where we are now, Jake said. Door's always open. Caleb nodded, not trusting his voice. One more thing. Jake's tone shifted, became serious. You see anything weird around town? Guys you don't recognize, cars that don't belong, you tell me. Understand? Why? Just do it. And Caleb? Jake waited until the boy looked at him. Whatever you're running from, you're not alone anymore. You got that? Caleb walked back to the warehouse in the dark, the container of barbecue warm in his hands, Jake's words echoing in his head. For the first time in 6 months, he let himself imagine what it might be like to stop running. He should have known better. The Scorpions, that's what the other bikers called them, started showing up 3 days after Riley's party. Caleb noticed them because noticing things kept you alive. 3 men in a black SUV parked across from Rusty's, watching. They weren't subtle. They weren't trying to be. Who are those guys? Caleb asked Rusty while they worked on a transmission. Rusty's jaw tightened. Nobody you need to worry about. They're watching the shop. Caleb, listen to me very carefully. Rusty set down his wrench and looked the boy in the eye. Those men are dangerous. They're here because of business that ain't yours. You see them, you look away. You hear them talk, you forget what you heard. You understand me? What kind of business? The kind that gets people hurt if they ask too many questions. But Caleb couldn't stop noticing. The Scorpions came back the next day, and the day after that. Sometimes it was the same 3 men, sometimes different ones. They always wore the same thing, black vests with a scorpion patch, faces that said they'd hurt you and sleep just fine after. On Thursday, Caleb was taking out trash when he heard voices from the alley behind Rusty's. He should have walked away, should have remembered Rusty's warning. He didn't. Hidden behind the dumpster, Caleb watched 2 Scorpions corner Rusty against the brick wall. Payments due, one of them said. He had a scar running from his eye to his jaw. You're 3 weeks late. I told Victor I needed more time, Rusty said, his voice tight with fear. Business has been slow. Victor doesn't care about slow. Victor cares about money. Scarface stepped closer. You want protection in this town. You pay for protection. It's not protection if you're the ones I need protection from. The second Scorpion, bigger, meaner looking, grabbed Rusty by the collar. You got a smart mouth for someone who owes 15 grand. I don't have 15 grand. Then you have a problem. Scarface pulled out a knife, casual as checking his watch. You got until Sunday to find the money. Sunday night? Victor comes personally. You want to explain to him why you can't pay? Be my guest. But I've seen what happens when people disappoint Victor. Ain't pretty. They left Rusty slumped against the wall, breathing hard. Caleb stayed hidden until he was sure they were gone, his heart hammering so hard he thought his ribs might crack. That night, he couldn't sleep. $15,000. Protection money. Victor. The Scorpions weren't just watching Rusty's. They owned it. They owned everything. And Caleb knew, with the cold certainty of someone who'd survived things he shouldn't have, that whatever the Scorpions were into was bigger and darker than protection money. Friday brought rain and trouble. Caleb was under a Honda Civic when he heard the motorcycles. Different sound than Jake's Harley. These were crotch rockets, high-pitched and aggressive. 3 of them parked right in front of the garage. Through the legs of the Honda, Caleb watched expensive boots walk across the floor. Designer jeans, leather jackets that cost more than Caleb made in 3 months. "Where's Rusty?" one of them demanded. "In the office," Martha called from the diner counter, her voice shaking. The boots walked away. Caleb stayed under the Honda, counting his breaths, thinking about exits. 5 minutes later, Rusty's voice carried from the office, loud and desperate. "I told your boys I need more time. Time's up." The new voice was smooth, educated, cold as winter. Victor. "You know how this works, Rusty. You pay, or you pay another way." "Please, Victor, I'm good for it. I just need—" "What you need is to remember who runs this town." A pause. "The Iron Brotherhood thinks they're tough? Thinks they can block my routes, interfere with my business? I'm going to send them a message they won't forget." Caleb's blood went cold. "Don't do this," Rusty begged. "Jake Torres has nothing to do with this." "Jake Torres and his little club have been making my life difficult for 6 months. Time they learned what happens when you get in my way." Victor's voice dropped lower. Caleb had to strain to hear. His wife, his kid. They're going to that thing tomorrow at Miller Park, right? The whole club, all their families. Public, lots of witnesses. Perfect. "Victor, please." "You want to protect the Iron Brotherhood? Pay me what you owe. Otherwise, shut up and stay out of my way." They left. Rusty stayed in his office. Caleb stayed under the Honda, his whole body shaking. They were going to hurt Riley. Going to hurt Sandra. Going to hurt Jake's family at Riley's school picnic tomorrow at Miller Park. Every survival instinct Caleb had screamed at him to run. This wasn't his problem. This wasn't his fight. He was invisible. He was a ghost. Ghosts didn't get involved. But Riley had shown him her unicorn helmet 3 times because she wanted him to care. Sandra had said, "You don't have to earn kindness." Jake had said, "You're not alone anymore." Caleb crawled out from under the Honda, his hands greasy, his mind racing. He had Jake's card. He could call, warn them, let the club handle it. Then what? The Scorpions would know someone talked. They'd come after Rusty. They'd come after the shop. They'd come after everyone, and Caleb would have a target on his back. Or he could run. Right now. Pack his bag, hit the highway, disappear, like he always did. Let Riley die because he was too much of a coward to make a phone call. Caleb looked at his shaking hands, covered in grease and old scars. He thought about his mother, who'd chosen pills over him every single day. He thought about foster homes where he was just a check, just a body in a bed. He thought about the warehouse where he slept on concrete because he didn't deserve anything better. Then he thought about Riley asking if he had a favorite color. He thought about Sandra saying, "You don't have to earn kindness." He thought about Jake saying, "Doors always open." And he thought about what kind of person he wanted to be. Caleb pulled out his phone, a prepaid burner he used for emergencies, and Jake's business card. His finger hovered over the numbers. One call. That's all it would take. But what if Jake didn't believe him? What if they thought he was crazy? What if the Scorpions found out? Caleb put the phone away. He'd go to Miller Park tomorrow. He'd watch. If anything looked wrong, if he saw the Scorpions, then he'd warn Jake. He'd have time. It would be fine. It was a terrible plan, and he knew it. But it was the only plan he had. Saturday morning came too fast and too bright. Caleb barely slept, his mind running through every possible scenario. He showed up at Miller Park at 10 a.m., 2 hours before the picnic started. The park was empty except for early morning joggers and dog walkers. He found a spot on a hill that overlooked the main pavilion where the picnic would be. From there, he could see the parking lot, the playground, the picnic tables. He could see everything. And he waited. The Iron Brotherhood started arriving around noon. Motorcycles rumbled into the parking lot, one after another. 30, 40, 50 bikes. Families unpacked coolers and blankets. Kids ran toward the playground. Someone set up a volleyball net. Caleb spotted Riley immediately. She wore her unicorn helmet, even though she wasn't riding a bike, her laugh carrying across the park. Sandra spread out a red checkered blanket. Jake helped another biker carry a massive grill. Everything looked normal. Perfect. Safe. Maybe Victor had been bluffing. Maybe Caleb had misheard. Maybe... 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. Caleb's stomach dropped. They parked at the far end, away from the motorcycles. Tinted windows, no plates on the front. The engines stayed running. Caleb stood up, his heart racing. He should run down there. He should warn Jake. He should... The windows of the first SUV rolled down. Caleb saw the guns. And he started running. Caleb's legs burned as he sprinted down the hill. His boots slipped on wet grass. He didn't care. The SUVs sat there like predators, windows down, barrels pointing toward families eating potato salad and birthday cake. "Jake!" Caleb's voice came out hoarse, desperate. Nobody heard him over the music and laughter. Riley stood near the volleyball net, 20 feet from the parking lot. She was showing another little girl her unicorn helmet, completely unaware. Sandra walked toward her from the picnic tables, carrying 2 juice boxes. The first gunman raised his weapon. "Behind me! Now!" Caleb roared, the words tearing from his throat like something primal and desperate. Heads turned. The music kept playing. For one frozen second, the whole park held its breath. Then the shooting started. The sound was nothing like movies. It was louder, sharper, more wrong. The MAC-10 chattered like a demon's typewriter. Caleb saw Riley's face go white with terror, saw Sandra's eyes go wide, saw Jake turn from the grill, understanding flooding his face too late. Caleb wasn't thinking anymore. His body moved on pure instinct, the same survival reflex that had kept him alive through 3 foster homes and 6 months on the street. But this time, instead of running away, he ran toward. 15 feet. He could see the bullets hitting the pavilion posts, splintering wood. 10 feet. Someone screamed. A man went down, clutching his leg. 8 feet. Riley stood frozen, her mouth open in a silent scream, her small body paralyzed by fear. "Move!" Caleb shouted at Sandra, who had started running toward her daughter. He hit them like a linebacker, wrapping his arms around both of them and driving them down behind the concrete picnic table. His shoulder cracked against the table edge. Pain exploded through his collarbone. He didn't care. "Stay down," he gasped, covering Riley's small body with his own. "Don't look up. Don't move." Riley's heart hammered against his chest like a trapped bird. Sandra's breath came in sharp, terrified gasps beneath him. More gunfire erupted. The Iron Brotherhood was shooting back now, their own weapons appearing from jackets and saddlebags. "My baby," Sandra whispered, her hands clutching Caleb's shirt. "My baby." "He's coming," Caleb promised, though he had no idea if it was true. His own voice sounded far away, like he was talking underwater. "He's coming, Riley. Just stay down." The third bullet took him in the chest, just right of center. Caleb heard his own breath leave his body in a wet, rattling gasp. The world tilted sideways. The blue sky above turned gray at the edges. "No," he whispered. "Not yet." He'd read somewhere that dying people saw their lives flash before their eyes. That wasn't happening to Caleb. Instead, he saw the things he'd never have. Graduating high school, learning to ride a motorcycle, eating Sunday dinner with people who cared if he showed up. He saw Riley growing up, getting married, having kids of her own. He saw Sandra's kind smile, Jake's gruff acceptance. He saw a life he'd almost believed in. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started. Tires squealed, engines roared. The SUVs were fleeing, their job done or their ammunition spent. Caleb didn't know which, didn't care. "Caleb?" Sandra's voice, shaking and scared. "Caleb, can you hear me?" He tried to answer. Couldn't. His mouth tasted like copper pennies. When he coughed, something warm and wet came up. "Medic!" Jake's voice, closer now. "Somebody call 911! Sandra! Riley!" "We're okay." Sandra's hands were on Caleb's face now, turning him gently. "Jake, we're okay, but Caleb... Oh God, Jake, there's so much blood." Strong hands lifted Caleb off Riley. Jake's face appeared above him, the big biker's eyes wet with tears. "What did you do?" Jake's voice cracked. "What the hell did you do, kid?" Caleb tried to smile. It hurt. Everything hurt. "Told you. I like dark blue." "Don't you dare," Jake said fiercely. "Don't you dare make jokes right now. Don't you—" His voice broke completely. Riley crawled out from under the table, her unicorn helmet askew, her face streaked with tears and grass stains. When she saw Caleb, she made a sound like a wounded animal. "No, no, no," she whispered, reaching for him. "You can't be hurt. You fixed my bike. You can't be hurt." "Hey, Riley Bear," Caleb managed. Speaking felt like swallowing glass. "You okay?" "I'm okay," she sobbed. "But you're... "I'm tough," he lied. "Tougher than wobbly bike wheels." Sandra pressed something against Caleb's chest. A tablecloth, a jacket, he couldn't tell. The pressure made him gasp, but he could see the desperate hope in her eyes. She was trying to stop the bleeding, trying to save him. "The ambulance is coming," she said, her voice shaking. "They're coming, Caleb. Just hold on. Just hold on for me." Around them, the park was chaos. People shouting, crying, calling for help. Caleb could hear other voices, other injuries. The biker who'd been shot in the leg. Why did you do it? Caleb's vision was getting darker now, the gray creeping in from all sides. "Because," he whispered. "Because she showed me her helmet 3 times." "What?" "Riley, the unicorns. She wanted me to care." Each word was harder than the last. "So I did." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees. Jake was yelling at someone to clear a path. Sandra kept pressure on Caleb's chest, her hands slick with blood. Riley held Caleb's limp hand, her small fingers wrapped around his big ones. "You're going to be okay," Riley said with the fierce certainty of children who haven't learned that the world breaks people. "You have to be okay, because we didn't even show you the cake yet. It's chocolate with vanilla frosting, and it's really good, and you have to try it." "Sounds good," Caleb breathed. "Promise you'll try it?" "Promise." The paramedics arrived like a storm, all efficiency and urgent voices. They cut away Caleb's shirt, the blue one he'd bought with his own money from Rusty's. Someone put a mask over his face. Someone else stuck needles in his arms. The world became a blur of hands and equipment and pain. "BP's dropping," a woman said. 70/40 and falling. "Multiple GSWs, a man said. "Chest, shoulder, abdomen. Possible pneumothorax. We need to move him now." They lifted Caleb onto a stretcher. The movement sent fresh agony through every nerve. He bit down on a scream, tasted blood. "I'm riding with him," Sandra said. It wasn't a question. "Ma'am, you can't—" "I'm riding with him," she repeated, her voice turning to steel. "That boy just took 3 bullets meant for me and my daughter. I'm not leaving him alone. Ever." The paramedic looked at her bloody hands, her fierce eyes, and nodded. Jake appeared at the stretcher's side as they wheeled Caleb toward the ambulance. The big biker's face was twisted with something Caleb had never seen before. Raw, unfiltered emotion. "You hear me, kid?" Jake's voice was rough. "You hang on. You fight. You understand? You don't get to save my family and then die. That's not how this works." Caleb wanted to answer, wanted to say something brave or funny or meaningful, but his tongue felt thick and useless. His eyes wouldn't stay open. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Riley's face pressed against the ambulance window, her small hand raised in a wave, her mouth forming words he couldn't hear. Then nothing. Inside the ambulance, machines beeped frantically. Sandra sat in the corner, out of the way, but refusing to leave. The paramedics worked with controlled urgency, their hands moving in practiced patterns. "Still dropping," the woman said. 60/30. "Damn it," the man adjusted something on Caleb's IV. "Radio ahead. Tell them we're coming in hot with a critical GSW. 17-year-old male, multiple penetrating injuries, significant blood loss, ETA 4 minutes. "He's just a kid," the woman said quietly. "Then we better make sure he makes it." Sandra watched them work, her own hands still covered in Caleb's blood. She'd known him less than 3 weeks, barely knew anything about him except that he was good with bikes and gentle with her daughter, and running from something he wouldn't talk about. But she knew the important thing. She knew he was the kind of person who threw himself on a grenade for strangers. "Don't you die," she whispered, not caring if anyone heard. "Don't you dare die on me, Caleb Marsh." Back at Miller Park, Jake stood in the center of carnage, his phone pressed to his ear. Around him, Iron Brotherhood members were tending to the wounded, calling families, watching the road for the Scorpion's return. "Marcus, it's Jake," he said into the phone. "Put out the call. Every chapter, every member, everyone who ever rode with us. Get to County General Hospital, now." "What happened?" "War happened. The Scorpions opened fire on our families, on our kids." Jake's voice went cold and hard. "And a 17-year-old kid none of us knew took 3 bullets, saving my wife and daughter. He's dying, Marcus. That boy is dying. because he had more courage in his skinny body than most men find in a lifetime. "What do you need?" "I need every brother on the road. I need them to know what happened. I need them to understand that this kid, this homeless, scared, brave kid, is one of us now. And when the Scorpions come for him, when they realize he's a witness who can identify them, I need them to know they'll have to go through every single one of us to get to him." "How many you want?" Jake looked at Riley, still crying in another biker's arms. He looked at the blood on the ground where Caleb had fallen. He looked at the shattered picnic tables and the bullet holes in the pavilion posts. "All of them," Jake said. "I want all of them." The ambulance screamed through traffic, sirens wailing. Inside, Caleb's body fought a losing battle. His heart stuttered. His breathing went shallow and wet. "We're losing him," the male paramedic said. "No, we're not." The woman started chest compressions, her hands pumping rhythmically. "Come on, kid. Don't quit on us." Sandra watched in horror as they shocked Caleb's chest. Once. Twice. His body jumped like a puppet with its strings cut. "Still no pulse. Again, charging to 200. The machine whined. They shocked him a third time. For 5 eternal seconds, nothing happened. Then the monitor beeped. Once. Twice. A rhythm establishing itself, weak but present. "We got him," the woman gasped. "We got him back." "For now," the man said grimly. "But he's not going to make it if we don't get him into surgery in the next 10 minutes. The ambulance pulled up to County General's emergency entrance. The doors flew open. A team of doctors and nurses swarmed the stretcher, wheeling Caleb toward the trauma bay at a run. Sandra tried to follow, but a nurse stopped her gently. "You can't go back there, ma'am. You need to wait." "That's my son," Sandra heard herself say. The lie came out so naturally she almost believed it herself. "That's my boy, and I'm not leaving him." The nurse looked at Sandra's bloody hands, her fierce eyes, and made a decision. "Waiting room's that way," she said softly. "I'll keep you updated. I promise." Sandra nodded, not trusting her voice. She walked to the waiting room on legs that felt like water, her mind replaying the last 3 hours on an endless loop. The guns, the screaming, Caleb's body covering Riley's, the blood, so much blood. She found a chair in the corner and sat down. Her hands were shaking. Her clothes were ruined. She didn't care about any of it. "Please," she whispered to God, to fate, to whatever force governed the universe. "Please let him live. Please." The automatic doors slid open. Jake walked in, still wearing his bloody leather vest. He looked around the empty waiting room until he found Sandra, then crossed to her in 3 long strides. "How is he?" "In surgery. They wouldn't let me back." Sandra looked up at her husband with red-rimmed eyes. "Jake, he saved our lives. That boy we barely know saved our baby's life." Jake sat down heavily beside her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "I called the club. Everyone within 500 miles. They're coming." "Good." "Sandra, when word gets out what happened, when the Scorpions find out that kid can identify them." "They'll come for him." "Yeah." Sandra's jaw set with determination. "Then they'll have to come through us." Jake took her hand, their fingers intertwining, blood and all. "That's what I told Marcus." Outside, the sun was setting, and on highways across 3 states, motorcycle engines roared to life as the Iron Brotherhood mobilized for war. The first motorcycle arrived 43 minutes after Caleb went into surgery. Then 3 more. Then a dozen. By the time the sun touched the horizon, The hospital parking lot looked like a chrome river, reflecting orange and gold light off handlebars and fuel tanks. Jake stood at the emergency room entrance, watching his brothers arrive. Marcus pulled up first, his Road King rumbling like distant thunder. He killed the engine and walked straight to Jake, pulling him into a hard embrace. "How bad?" Marcus asked. "Bad. 3 bullets. They've been working on him for almost an hour." "The kid gonna make it?" "I don't know." Jake's voice cracked. "I don't know, brother." More bikes arrived. Members from chapters Jake hadn't seen in years. Men who'd retired from club life came back wearing their old vests. Women who rode solo. Clubs that normally kept to themselves. Even rival organizations that had bad blood with the Iron Brotherhood. They all came. "This is unprecedented," a nurse said, watching from the window. She'd worked at County General for 22 years and never seen anything like it. "Who is that boy?" "Someone worth saving," her colleague answered simply. Inside the trauma bay, Dr. Sarah Chen worked with the focused intensity of someone who'd spent 15 years putting broken bodies back together. Caleb's chest was open, his young heart exposed and struggling. The damage was extensive. The bullet that hit near his sternum had missed his heart by less than an inch, but it had shredded his left lung and nicked a major artery. "Suction," Dr. Chen said calmly. "I need better visualization." "BP's still dropping," the anesthesiologist reported. 80 over 50. "Give him another unit." Dr. Chen's hands moved with precision, tying off bleeders, repairing what could be repaired. "This kid's a fighter. His body wants to live." "He's 17, a surgical nurse said quietly. "Just a baby." "Old enough to take 3 bullets for strangers." Dr. Chen glanced at the x-rays on the screen. "Old enough to be a hero." The second bullet had done less damage but caused more complications. It was lodged near Caleb's spine, too dangerous to remove immediately. The third had torn through his shoulder, shattering his clavicle and ripping muscle tissue. "We're going to be here a while," Dr. Chen said. "Someone told that family in the waiting room it's going to be a long night." But when the nurse went to deliver the message, she found the waiting room had transformed. It was packed wall to wall with leather-clad bikers, some sitting, most standing, all silent and grim-faced. Sandra sat in the middle of them like a queen surrounded by warriors. Riley slept in her lap, exhausted from crying. "The doctor says it's going to be several more hours," the nurse announced. "You folks might want to go home, get some rest." "We're staying," 30 voices said in unison. The nurse didn't argue. Jake's phone rang. He stepped outside to take it, and Marcus followed. "Torres," Jake answered. "It's Detective Williams. I heard about the shooting. How's your family?" "Alive, because of that kid." Jake's jaw tightened. "You calling to tell me you caught the shooters?" "We found the SUVs, burned out about 40 miles north. No prints, no evidence. These guys know what they're doing." "Scorpions." Williams sighed. "I can't confirm that without evidence." "I can confirm it. Victor's been making threats for weeks. This was retaliation for us shutting down his trafficking routes." "Jake, I need you to let us handle this. Don't go vigilante on me." A 17-year-old homeless kid took bullets meant for my wife and daughter, Jake said, his voice dangerous and quiet. "He's in there right now, with his chest cut open, because he was braver than any of us. You think I'm going to let the animals who did this walk free?" "I think you're going to let the law handle it." "The law?" Jake laughed bitterly. The law didn't protect those families today. The law didn't throw itself in front of bullets. A kid did. A kid the system failed so badly, he was sleeping in an abandoned warehouse rather than ask for help. Williams was quiet for a moment. I'll do everything I can to bring these people to justice. You have my word. Your word won't mean much if Victor gets to Caleb first. Jake hung up. Marcus lit a cigarette, offered one to Jake. Jake shook his head. What's the play? Marcus asked. We protect the kid. 24/7 guard rotation until the scorpions are dealt with. And how are we dealing with them? Jake's expression went cold. However we have to. Inside, more bikers kept arriving. The head of security, a middle-aged man named Frank, approached the growing crowd with increasing concern. Folks, I appreciate the show of support, but we have fire code regulations. I'm going to need some of you to wait outside. A woman with silver hair and a leather vest covered in patches stood up. Her name was Dorothy Chen, no relation to the surgeon, and she'd been riding with the Devil's Disciples for 40 years. Son, she said to Frank, her voice gentle but immovable. That boy up there saved lives today. Saved children. You want us to leave, you're going to have to call the police and have them drag us out. And I promise you, the optics of that won't look good on the news. Frank looked at the sea of leather and chrome, at the fierce loyalty on every face, and made an executive decision. I'll get more chairs, he said. By midnight, the count had reached 300 bikers. They spilled out into the hallways, the cafeteria, the parking lot. Hospital staff brought coffee and sandwiches, touched by the vigil. Local news crews showed up, filming the unprecedented gathering. Can you tell us what's happening here? A reporter asked a biker named Tommy. A kid took bullets for people he barely knew, Tommy said simply. We're making sure he knows he didn't do it alone. Are you family? We are now. The footage went viral within hours. By dawn, it would be national news. In the surgical suite, Dr. Chen finally stepped back from the table. She'd been operating for 6 hours straight. Her back ached, her hands were cramping, but Caleb's heart was beating steadily now. His lung was repaired, and the bleeding had stopped. Close him up, she told her team, and get him to ICU. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's got a fighting chance. Doctor? The anesthesiologist said. His blood pressure just spiked, heart rate's jumping. Dr. Chen looked at the monitors, frowning. He's seizing. Get me 2 of Ativan, now! Caleb's body went rigid on the table, muscles contracting violently. The seizure lasted 43 seconds, an eternity for everyone watching. There, Dr. Chen said, as the Ativan took effect. Okay, that's okay. Probably a reaction to the trauma. We'll monitor him closely. But privately, she worried. The human body could only take so much, and Caleb's 17-year-old body had been through hell. Sandra jerked awake when Dr. Chen finally emerged from the surgical wing. It was 2:47 a.m. She'd been in surgery for almost 8 hours. Every biker in the waiting room stood up as one, a wave of leather and anxiety. He made it through surgery, Dr. Chen said, without preamble. She believed in being direct. But the next 48 hours are critical. He lost a tremendous amount of blood. His body's been through severe trauma. He had a seizure on the table, which concerns me. Can we see him? Sandra asked. He's in ICU, unconscious, intubated. He looks rough. Dr. Chen paused. But he's alive. Against considerable odds, he's alive. What are his chances? Jake asked. Dr. Chen looked at the crowd of bikers, at Sandra's tear-stained face, at Riley waking up in her mother's arms. She thought about the boy on her operating table, 17 years old, with scars that told stories of abuse and neglect, who'd somehow found the courage to be someone's shield. Honestly, if he'd been anyone else, he'd already be dead.
But that kid fought me every step of the way. His body kept trying to live even when it shouldn't have been able to. She smiled slightly. So I'd say his chances are better than they should be. And that's all we can ask for right now. Thank you, Sandra said, her voice breaking. Thank you for saving him. Thank him for being worth saving. They let Sandra and Jake see Caleb first.
Riley came too, despite the ICU rules about children. Nobody had the heart to stop her. The ICU was quiet, antiseptic, filled with the rhythmic beeping of machines. Caleb looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, his chest wrapped in bandages, tubes and wires running from his body to monitors and IV bags. A breathing tube ran down his throat. His face was pale as paper, bruised around the eyes from the trauma. Riley started crying the moment she saw him.
He looks dead,
she whispered. He's not dead, baby, Sandra said, pulling Riley close. See? His chest is moving. He's breathing. But the machine is helping him breathe until he's strong enough to do it himself. Jake stood at the bedside, his big hands gentle on the railing. He stared at Caleb's still face, at the evidence of violence written across his young body, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. I'm going to ask you something, Sandra said quietly to Jake. And I need you to be honest with me. Anything. When you look at him, what do you see? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I see my son, he said finally. I see the boy who saved my family. I see someone who deserves better than what the world gave him. Me too. Sandra reached down and took Caleb's hand carefully, mindful of the IV line. So, when he wakes up, we're going to make sure he knows he's got a home. A real one. With us. Sandra, don't argue with me, Jake Torres. That boy is ours now. I don't care what paperwork we have to file or what hoops we have to jump through. He's ours. Riley nodded fiercely. He's my brother. He saved me. That makes him my brother forever. Jake looked at his wife, his daughter, the unconscious boy in the bed. He thought about the phone call he'd have to make to social services, the legal battles ahead, the danger still circling them all like sharks. Okay, he said. Okay. We'll figure it out. They stayed for 10 minutes, the maximum the nurses allowed, then returned to the waiting room where 300 bikers waited for news. He's alive, Jake announced. Critical, but stable. They'll let us see him in shifts, 2 at a time. A collective exhale filled the room. Some bikers hugged. Others wiped away tears they'd never admit to crying. Now what? Marcus asked. Now we wait, Jake said, and we protect him. Victor's going to figure out soon that we have a witness who can identify his shooters. When he does, he'll come for Caleb. So we make sure he can't get to him. I'll set up the rotation, Marcus said. 6-hour shifts, teams of 4, armed. No guns in the hospital, a nurse protested weakly. Dorothy Chen stood up again. Sweetheart, there's about to be weapons in this hospital whether you like it or not. But they're not for causing trouble, they're for preventing it. That boy in there is a target, and we're his shield, just like he was a shield for that little girl. You understand? The nurse looked at Riley, asleep again in Sandra's arms, and nodded slowly. By 4 a.m., the number had grown to 500 bikers. By dawn, it was approaching 800. They came from neighboring states, from chapters that hadn't ridden together in years, from clubs with names like the Iron Lords and the Desert Riders and the Pale Riders, a legendary club that hadn't mobilized in 15 years. Their president, a 70-year-old man named Samuel, who'd served in Vietnam, walked into the hospital at 5:23 a.m. with 20 of his brothers behind him.
"Where's Torres?" he asked. Jake stood up. He'd met Samuel once, years ago, at a memorial run. The old man commanded respect like gravity commanded falling. "Samuel," Jake said, offering his hand. "I didn't think the Pale Riders rode anymore." "We don't." Samuel's handshake was firm.
But when I heard what that boy did, I told my brothers we were riding one more time, because that's what honor demands. Where is he? ICU, critical condition. Samuel nodded slowly. My grandson is 17, same age as your boy. If someone had saved my grandson's life, I'd want them protected. So that's what we're doing. The Pale Riders stand with the Iron Brotherhood until this is done. You don't have to, son. I've lived 70 years and seen a lot of cowards. Men who talk big but run when bullets fly. That boy didn't run. He charged toward danger to save strangers. If that's not worth protecting, nothing is. The sky was turning pink with dawn when Detective Williams returned. He looked exhausted, his tie loose, his shirt wrinkled. He found Jake outside having coffee with Marcus. "We arrested Victor," Williams said without preamble. Jake's head snapped up. "What?" "We raided his operation 2 hours ago. Found the whole trafficking network. Safe houses, records, evidence of dozens of victims. We got him on RICO charges, human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder. He's not walking away from this." "How?" Williams smiled grimly. "Your boy, Caleb Marsh, he's listed in foster system databases. When he got shot, it triggered an automatic notification to Child Services. They pulled his file, saw the abuse history, and some social worker with a conscience started making calls. Those calls reached someone at the FBI who'd been building a case against Victor for 3 years. They moved fast." "Is Caleb safe?" "Victor's locked up, but he's got lieutenants. They know there's a witness. They'll want Caleb silenced." Williams paused. "Which is why I'm not going to tell you to send your brothers home. Keep the kid protected. The FBI's got warrants out for Victor's whole organization, but these things take time." "How much time?" "Days, maybe. Maybe a week." Jake looked at the sea of motorcycles in the parking lot, at the bikers standing watch like soldiers. "We can do that." Williams nodded. "I figured you could. One more thing. Caleb's going to need somewhere to go when he's released. Foster systems already failed him once. You know anybody who might take him in?" Jake smiled for the first time in 12 hours. "Yeah, Detective. I think I do." Inside the ICU, machines beeped steadily. Caleb's chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the ventilator. His brain registered none of this. He floated in darkness, sometimes seeing his mother's face, sometimes hearing Riley's laugh, sometimes feeling Sandra's gentle hands and Jake's protective presence. "Come back," a voice whispered in the dark, Riley's voice. "Come back, Caleb. We're waiting for you." His heart rate increased slightly. The nurse on duty made a note. "Increased responsiveness to family voices," she wrote. Good sign. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The morning shift at County General arrived to find over 1,000 motorcycles parked in formation, their riders standing vigil. Security had given up trying to control the situation. The hospital administrator simply announced that visiting hours were suspended, the cafeteria would remain open 24 hours, and anyone causing trouble would be dealt with swiftly. Nobody caused trouble. Sandra sat in the ICU waiting room. Riley curled up beside her. Jake paced the hallway. Marcus coordinated guard rotations. Dorothy Chen organized a food run for all the bikers who'd been there all night. And somewhere in the city, Victor's lieutenants held an emergency meeting. The boss was in jail. Their operation was collapsing. And there was a 17-year-old witness who could identify the shooters. "We need to handle this," Victor's second-in-command said, "before he wakes up and talks."
"He's protected. Thousands of bikers."
"I don't care if there's 10,000. We get to him, or we all go down." They started making plans. Caleb woke up drowning. His throat was on fire, something rigid and wrong shoved down into his lungs. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't scream. Panic flooded his system. His eyes flew open to blinding white light and beeping machines, and a woman's face hovering above him.
"Caleb, you're okay,"
the nurse said, her hands gentle on his shoulders.
"Don't fight the tube. Let it breathe for you. You're safe. You're in the hospital."
Safe. The word didn't compute. Nothing felt safe. His chest was agony, his shoulder screamed with every heartbeat, and something vital felt broken inside him in ways that had nothing to do with bullets.
"I'm going to get your family," the nurse said. "Don't try to move." Family.
Caleb's confused mind tried to process that. He didn't have family. Family was his mother in a grave and an uncle who used fists instead of words. Family was foster homes where he was a check, not a person. Then Sandra appeared, her face lighting up like sunrise.
"Oh, thank God,"
she breathed, taking his hand carefully.
"You're awake. You're really awake."
Caleb tried to speak around the tube. Couldn't. His eyes must have shown his confusion because Sandra squeezed his hand.
"Riley's okay,"
she said immediately.
"I'm okay. You saved us, Caleb. You saved my baby."
The memories hit him like a second round of bullets. The SUVs, the guns, Riley's terrified face. The decision that took 3 seconds and changed everything. "The doctors say the breathing tube comes out tomorrow if you keep improving," Sandra continued. "Your lung collapsed during surgery, but Dr. Chen fixed it. You're going to be okay." Caleb didn't feel okay. He felt like he'd been hit by a truck, run over twice, then set on fire. But Sandra's hand in his was warm and real, and for the first time since waking up, the panic started to recede. Jake appeared in the doorway. The big biker looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes red-rimmed, his face haggard. When he saw Caleb's open eyes, something in his expression crumpled. "Hey, kid," Jake said roughly. "You scared the hell out of us." Caleb tried to gesture at the tube, frustrated by his inability to speak. "I know you can't talk," Jake said, moving to the other side of the bed. "So I'm going to do the talking, and you're going to listen. You understand?" Caleb managed a small nod. "What you did, throwing yourself in front of those bullets, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen. And I've seen combat, kid. I've seen men earn medals. But you didn't think. You just acted. You saw my family in danger, and you became their shield." Tears leaked from the corners of Caleb's eyes, running down into his hair. "Don't cry," Sandra said gently, wiping his face. "It's okay. Everything's okay now." But Caleb couldn't stop. 3 years of running, 3 years of being invisible, 3 years of convinced himself he didn't need anyone. It all came crashing down in that sterile hospital room while machines beeped and a breathing tube kept him alive. "There's something else you need to know," Jake said. "When you're ready to leave here, you're coming home with us. Not to a motel. Not to that warehouse we found your stuff in. Home. With me and Sandra and Riley. We've already started the paperwork for emergency guardianship." Caleb's eyes went wide. He shook his head frantically, trying to speak, choking on the tube. "Stop," Sandra commanded. "Don't hurt yourself, just listen." You're 17, Caleb, Jake continued. In less than a year, you're legally an adult, and you can make your own choices. But until then, you need somewhere safe, somewhere with people who give a damn if you come home at night. That's us. We're your people now. The heart monitor's beeping accelerated. A nurse poked her head in, saw the increased vitals, and frowned.
You're getting him worked up. He needs rest.
We're almost done, Sandra promised. She leaned closer to Caleb.
I know this is scary. I know you're used to being alone. But you don't have to be alone anymore. Riley asks about you every 5 minutes. She's drawn you 17 pictures. She's convinced you're her brother now, and nothing's going to change her mind.
Caleb's chest hitched with silent sobs. So you rest, Jake said. You heal. And when you're ready, we'll bring you home. They stayed until the nurse kicked them out. When they left, Caleb lay in the quiet ICU, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what his life had become. 2 days later, they removed the breathing tube. Caleb's first words were a raspy, painful whisper.
Why?
Dr. Chen, who was checking his vitals, looked up.
Why what? Why are they doing this?
His throat felt like sandpaper.
The Torres family.
Why do they want me? Because you saved their daughter's life, Dr. Chen said simply. And because they're good people who see a kid who needs a family. I don't need, yes, you do. Dr. Chen's tone was firm. I read your medical records, Caleb. Every scar, every healed fracture, every sign of long-term abuse. The system failed you. Your biological family failed you. But Jake and Sandra Torres? They're choosing you. Don't throw that away because you're scared. I'm not scared. You're terrified. It's written all over your face. She paused. Being brave enough to take bullets is easy compared to being brave enough to let people love you. But you're going to have to do both. Later that afternoon, Riley visited. Sandra had to practically carry her into the ICU because hospital rules said she was too young, but the nursing staff had learned not to argue with the Torres family. You're awake! Riley launched herself at the bed, stopping just short when Sandra caught her. Careful, baby, he's still hurt. I know. I'll be gentle. Riley climbed carefully into the chair beside Caleb's bed. I made you pictures. Want to see? Caleb's voice was still rough. Sure. Riley pulled out a stack of drawings from her backpack. The first showed a stick figure boy with a cape flying through the air. That's you being a superhero, she explained. The second showed a family holding hands, 2 adults, a little girl, and a teenage boy. That's us. You're part of our family now, Mom and Dad said. Caleb's eyes stung. Riley, Do you not want to be my brother? Her voice went small and scared. Because I really want you to be my brother. Madison's brother is mean and doesn't play with her, but I bet you'd be a good brother. You already saved my life. That's what good brothers do. I've never been a brother before, Caleb admitted. Then I'll teach you. It's easy. You just have to live at our house and eat dinner with us, and maybe play dolls sometimes if I ask really nice. Despite everything, the pain, the fear, the confusion, Caleb smiled. I don't know how to play dolls. That's okay. I'll show you. Sandra watched from the doorway, her heart full. Jake stood beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Think we can handle a teenage boy? Jake murmured. I think we don't have a choice, Sandra replied. He's already ours. We just have to convince him. The third day brought FBI agents. 2 of them, a woman named Carter and a man named Rodriguez. They were polite but thorough,
asking Caleb to describe everything he remembered about the shooting. 3 SUVs, Caleb said, his voice getting stronger each day. Black, tinted windows. The shooters wore black vests with scorpion patches. Can you identify any of them? Carter asked. The one in the first car. He had a scar, here to here. Caleb traced a line from his eye to his jaw.
And tattoos on his neck. Spiderwebs. Rodriguez exchanged a look with Carter. That's Damon Reeves, Victor's right hand. We've been after him for years. Will I have to testify? Caleb asked. Eventually, yes, but we've got Victor on multiple charges. Your testimony will help lock down the attempted murder counts. Carter leaned forward. Caleb, you need to understand. Victor's organization is falling apart, but his lieutenants are desperate. They know you can identify them. That makes you a target. The bikers, Caleb said. There's so many of them. Over 1,000 now, Rodriguez confirmed. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Rival clubs standing together. The Pale Riders came out of retirement. Even some outlaw clubs showed up. All for you. I don't understand why. Carter's expression softened. Because what you did was extraordinary. You threw yourself in front of bullets for a stranger's child. That kind of courage deserves protection, deserves respect. After they left, Caleb lay in bed thinking about honor and sacrifice, and whether he deserved any of the things happening to him. The fourth day, Marcus visited. The big biker brought a leather jacket, small, teenager-sized, with a patch sewn on the back. Can't make you a full member until you're 18, Marcus said gruffly. But Jake wanted you to have this. It's a prospect jacket. Means you're family. You're protected. You're one of us. Caleb touched the soft leather, the carefully stitched wolf patch. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. You bled for us, kid. You earned it. I didn't do it for the club. I didn't even know. Doesn't matter why you did it. Matters that you did. Marcus sat down heavily. You know how many people talk about honor, about brotherhood, about protecting the innocent? Thousands. You know how many actually do it when bullets fly? Almost none. You did. That makes you rare. That makes you valuable. That makes you ours. That night, alone in his hospital room, Caleb tried on the jacket. It fit perfectly. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror, skinny, scarred, 17 years old, wearing leather that meant he belonged to something bigger than himself. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't look like a ghost. The fifth day brought danger. Marcus was on guard duty with 3 other bikers when the men dressed as orderlies arrived. They were too clean, too alert, their eyes scanning the hallways like predators. Can I help you? Marcus asked, stepping into their path. Just here to transport a patient to imaging, the tallest one said. He had a clipboard that looked official. His badge looked official too, but his boots were wrong. Combat boots, not hospital shoes. And there was a bulge under his scrubs that looked suspiciously like a weapon. What patient? Marcus asked, his hand moving to his belt. Caleb Marsh, ICU bed 7. Let me verify that. Marcus pulled out his phone. The 4 men exchanged glances. That's when Marcus knew for sure. Now! The tall one shouted. They rushed Marcus. He got one good punch in, breaking the tall man's nose, before they swarmed him. But Marcus wasn't alone. 3 more Iron Brotherhood members appeared from the waiting room, then 5 more from the stairwell. The fake orderlies realized too late they'd walked into a trap. The fight lasted 90 seconds. Hospital security arrived to find 4 men zip-tied on the floor, bleeding from various injuries, while bikers stood over them like avenging angels. "They tried to get to Caleb," Marcus explained to the security chief. "Checked their pockets. I bet you find weapons." They did. 2 handguns, 3 knives, and a syringe filled with something that definitely wasn't medication. Detective Williams arrived within the hour. He looked at the 4 restrained men, looked at the bikers, and sighed. "You know I should arrest all of you for assault." "Self-defense," Marcus said calmly. "They attacked first." "You have witnesses?" "About 40 of them." Williams almost smiled. "I'll take these 4 into custody, run their prints, see who they're connected to. But Marcus," he paused, "next time, maybe try not to break quite so many bones." They were coming for a kid in a hospital bed. They're lucky I stopped at broken bones. After Williams left with the prisoners, Jake went to Caleb's room. The boy was sitting up, pale and shaken, having heard the commotion. "They came for me," Caleb said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, they did." "Someone could have been hurt. You should send everyone home. I'll figure something out." "No." Jake's voice was flat. "You're not running again. You're not putting yourself in danger because you think you're not worth protecting." "People are going to get hurt because of me." "People already got hurt because of you. You. When you threw yourself in front of bullets, when you became a shield, you think we're going to honor that sacrifice by abandoning you?" Jake sat on the edge of the bed. "Listen to me very carefully. You are worth protecting. You are worth fighting for. And we're not leaving. Not now. Not ever." Caleb's hands shook. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be someone people fight for." "You learn," Jake said simply. "Same way you learned to survive on the streets. Same way you learned to fix motorcycles. You learn." The 6th day, social services arrived. A tired-looking woman named Patricia Chen, another Chen, no relation to the others, who carried a thick file folder with Caleb's name on it. "I've reviewed your case," she told Caleb, Sandra, and Jake in a small conference room. "Foster home placements beginning at age 14, 3 different homes, multiple reports of abuse that were never properly investigated. You ran 6 months ago from your last placement. Your caseworker never filed a missing persons report." "That's criminal," Sandra said, her voice tight with anger. "That's the system," Patricia replied wearily. "Overworked, understaffed, kids falling through cracks." She looked at Caleb. "I'm sorry we failed you." Caleb didn't know what to say to that. "However," Patricia continued, "Jake and Sandra Torres have filed for emergency guardianship. They've passed background checks, home inspection, financial review. Under normal circumstances, I'd require a longer evaluation period. But these aren't normal circumstances." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means I'm approving the guardianship, temporary for now, with a review in 6 months. If everything goes well, we can make it permanent before Caleb turns 18. She slid papers across the table. "Caleb, you're a minor, but you're old enough to have a say. Do you want to live with the Torres family?" Every eye turned to him. Caleb looked at Sandra's hopeful face, at Jake's steady gaze, at the papers that would make him legally part of their family. "Yes," he whispered. Then, stronger, "Yes." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. Jake's hand found hers under the table. "Then it's done," Patricia said, smiling for the first time. "Welcome to your new family, Caleb." That evening, Riley visited with a cake she'd made herself. It was lopsided, and the frosting was more on the plate than the cake, but she was so proud. "It's a celebration cake," she announced, "because you're officially my brother now. Mom showed me the papers. They have your name and everything." Caleb stared at the cake, at Riley's beaming face, at Sandra and Jake standing in the doorway.
I don't deserve this, he said quietly. Probably not, Jake agreed. None of us deserve the good things we get, but we take them anyway. We accept them with gratitude, and we try to be worthy of them. What if I mess up? What if I'm not? Then you mess up, and we figure it out together, Sandra said.
That's what families do. They mess up, they forgive, they keep going. Riley cut the cake with great ceremony. It tasted terrible. Too much salt, not enough sugar, but Caleb ate every bite. The 7th day, Dr. Chen cleared Caleb for discharge. His lung function was good, his wounds were healing, and while he'd need physical therapy for his shoulder, he was stable enough to leave. You got lucky, kid, Dr. Chen said. 1 more inch in any direction, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Someone was looking out for you. Yeah, Caleb said, touching his chest where the scars would be. I think so. The discharge plan involved coordination worthy of a military operation. Marcus organized an escort, 50 motorcycles, to accompany them from the hospital to the Torres house. Detective Williams provided 2 police cars. The FBI sent an agent to sweep the house for security. Is all this necessary? Caleb asked. Until we catch the rest of Victor's organization? Yeah, Jake said. It is. The morning of discharge, over 300 bikers assembled in the hospital parking lot. They'd been there for 7 days straight, rotating shifts, maintaining vigil. Some had taken vacation days from work, others had driven hundreds of miles, all for a kid most of them had never met. Caleb walked out of County General in his new leather jacket, moving slowly, his arm in a sling. The moment he appeared, every biker stood up. Then they started their engines. The sound was like rolling thunder, a wall of noise that shook windows and rattled teeth. Caleb stopped, overwhelmed. That's for you, Sandra said gently. That's them saying welcome home. Riley grabbed Caleb's good hand. Come on, brother. Let's go home. They walked through the corridor of bikers, every face nodding respect as they passed. Some touched Caleb's shoulder lightly, others saluted. All of them acknowledged him as one of their own. Samuel, the old Pale Rider president, stepped forward as they reached Jake's truck. Son, Samuel said, his weathered face serious. What you did was the act of a man, not a boy. You honored us all. You gave us something to believe in again. For that, you have our protection. You have our respect. And you have our gratitude. Caleb's throat was too tight to speak. He managed a nod. The ride to the Torres house took 30 minutes through normal traffic. With the motorcycle escort, it took an hour. They rode slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone in town saw the procession. By the time they reached Maple Street, news helicopters circled overhead. The house looked the same as Caleb remembered from Riley's birthday party. Small, neat, with a yard that needed mowing. But now it meant something different. It meant home. Your room's the second on the right, Sandra said, as she unlocked the door. We moved some furniture around, got you a new bed. Riley wanted to help decorate, so if there's too many unicorns, we can change it. Caleb climbed the stairs slowly, his body still healing. The door to his room was open. Inside was a real bed with a blue comforter, a desk, a dresser, a bookshelf. On the wall, Riley had hung her drawings. On the desk sat his backpack, the one with his mother's locket and his notebook. Found it in the warehouse, Jake said quietly from the doorway. Figured you'd want your things. Caleb sat on the edge of the bed. It was soft. Too soft. He wasn't used to soft. This is really mine? He asked. Really yours, for as long as you want it. That night, the Torres family sat down to dinner together. Sandra had made pot roast. Riley talked non-stop about school. Jake told stories about the week's motorcycle repairs, and Caleb sat there, eating home-cooked food at a real table with people who wanted him there, trying to understand that this was his life now. After dinner, he helped Riley with her homework. After that, he watched a movie with the family. At 10 o'clock, Sandra told Riley to get ready for bed.
"Will you tuck me in?"
Riley asked Caleb. "I don't know how."
"It's easy. You just sit on the bed and say goodnight."
So Caleb sat on Riley's bed in her unicorn-covered room and said goodnight. Riley hugged him carefully, mindful of his injuries.
"I'm glad you're my brother,"
she said.
"Even if it took getting shot to make it happen."
Me too, Caleb realized. Me too. Later, alone in his new room, Caleb took out his mother's locket. He looked at her picture in the dim light, at the woman who'd loved pills more than her son.
"I found a family, Mom," he said quietly. "Not the one I was born into. A different kind. The kind that chooses you."
He put the locket on the nightstand where he could see it, then lay back on the soft bed. For the first time in 6 months, he didn't pack his bag before sleeping. He didn't check the exits. He didn't plan his escape route. He just closed his eyes and slept, knowing that if he had nightmares, there were people down the hall who would hear him call. The nightmares came on the third night home. Caleb woke up screaming, his voice raw, his body tangled in sweat-soaked sheets. He was back in the park, bullets flying, Riley's terrified face inches from his own. But this time he was too slow. This time the bullets found her instead. The bedroom door flew open. Jake stood there in pajama pants and an old t-shirt, his hair sticking up, his eyes alert despite the 3 a.m. hour. "You're okay," Jake said, not moving closer. "You're home. You're safe."
"I couldn't save her,"
Caleb gasped.
"I tried, but I couldn't."
"You did save her. Riley's fine. She's asleep in her room right now, dreaming about unicorns or whatever 8-year-olds dream about." Caleb's hands shook. His chest hurt where the scars were still healing. It felt so real. "I know." Jake sat down in the chair by the window, giving Caleb space. "I had nightmares for 2 years after I came back from Afghanistan. Still get them sometimes. Sandra knows to wake me up gently." "How do you make them stop?" "You don't. You learn to live with them. You learn that the nightmare isn't real, but the people who care about you are." Jake paused. "You want to talk about it?" "No." "Okay. You want me to stay until you fall back asleep?" Caleb wanted to say no, wanted to prove he was tough enough to handle this alone. But the darkness felt too heavy, and the silence too loud. "Yeah," he whispered. "If that's okay." "That's what dads do, kid." The word hit Caleb like a punch. Dad. He'd never had one of those, never knew what it felt like to have someone sit with you when the dark got too scary. Jake stayed until Caleb's breathing evened out. Then he stayed another hour, just to be sure. The first week home was adjustment and healing. Physical therapy 3 times a week for Caleb's shoulder. Appointments with a therapist Sandra insisted on. "You've been through trauma, baby. You need to talk to someone." Learning the rhythms of family life. Dinner at 6, homework after. Riley's bedtime at 8:30, though she negotiated for 9 on weekends. "You're spoiling her," Jake told Caleb one night, watching him play dolls with Riley for the 3rd hour straight. "She saved my life," Caleb said. "She saved your life?" "She asked me to come to her birthday party. She showed me her helmet. She made me care about something other than running." Caleb adjusted the tiny plastic crown on the doll's head. "If she wants me to play dolls, I'll play dolls." Jake smiled and said nothing. The second week brought unwelcome news. Detective Williams called while they were eating breakfast. "We've got a problem," Williams said when Jake answered. "Damon Reeves made bail." Jake's hand tightened on the phone. "How?" "Expensive lawyer, technicality, judge who is either incompetent or bought. Doesn't matter, he's out. And Jake?" Williams's voice turned grim. "We have intelligence that suggests he's planning something. Caleb needs protection." "He's got it." "I'm talking about serious protection. FBI witness protection, relocation, new identity. No." Caleb's voice cut through the conversation. He'd been listening from the table. "I'm not running again." Williams sighed through the phone. "Son, this man wants you dead. He's got resources, connections, and nothing to lose. You understand what that means?" "It means he's dangerous. I get it." Caleb stood up, his jaw set. "But I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of letting bad people make me hide." "This isn't about pride." "It's not about pride. It's about being someone worth standing up for. If I run now, if I hide, then what was the point? Why did I take those bullets if I'm just going to disappear anyway?" Jake looked at Caleb with something like pride in his eyes. "The kid stays," he told Williams. "We'll handle it." "Your funeral," Williams muttered, then caught himself. "Poor choice of words. Just be careful." After Jake hung up, Sandra turned to Caleb. Her face was pale but determined. "If you're staying, we do this smart," she said. "No going anywhere alone. Marcus or one of the other brothers escorts you everywhere. Physical therapy, school when you're ready to enroll, even just walking to the mailbox, understand?" "School?" Caleb asked. "You think we're not going to make you finish high school?" Sandra raised an eyebrow. "You're 17, baby. You've got a future to think about." The idea of having a future still felt foreign to Caleb, but he nodded. That afternoon, Marcus showed up with enrollment papers for Millbrook High School. "You're seriously making me go to school?" Caleb asked. "You're seriously going to argue about it?" Marcus shot back. "Kid, you took 3 bullets. You survived surgery. You can handle algebra." "I haven't been to school in 6 months." "Then you've got catching up to do." Riley, overhearing this conversation, clapped her hands. "You'll be in high school. That's where the big kids go. Can you try out for football? Madison's brother plays football and he's really cool." "I can barely lift my arm, Riley." "Not now. Later, when you're healed." Caleb looked at Sandra, at Jake, at Marcus, at Riley's hopeful face. They were all watching him like this was normal, like planning for next month, next year, was something he should expect to be around for. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay, I'll go to school." Riley hugged him so hard his ribs protested. The third week, Damon Reeves struck. It happened at Riley's school. Sandra was picking her up, like always. Marcus was following in his truck, like always. Everything seemed normal until the black sedan pulled up alongside Sandra's car in the pickup line. The window rolled down. Damon Reeves smiled, his scarred face unmistakable. "Tell that kid of yours his time's running out," Reeves called to Sandra. "Tell him we know where he sleeps." Then the sedan was gone, disappearing into traffic before Marcus could even get out of his truck. Sandra drove home shaking so hard she could barely hold the wheel. Riley, confused and scared by her mother's fear, cried in the back seat. "Mom, what's wrong? Who was that man?" "Nobody, baby. Just a bad man who's going away soon." But Sandra knew better, and when she told Jake what happened, his face went stone cold. "He threatened our family," Jake said quietly.
That quiet was more dangerous than yelling.
He came to our daughter's school.
We need to call Williams, Sandra said.
Williams can't do anything. Reeves didn't break any laws, didn't touch anyone, just talked.
Jake's hands clenched into fists, but he made his intentions clear. Caleb, listening from the stairs, felt ice in his stomach.
This is my fault. I should leave.
Don't finish that sentence, Jake said without turning around. You're not leaving. You're not running. We're not letting them win.
But Riley
is fine. She's going to stay fine. Because we're going to end this. Jake finally turned to look at Caleb. You trust me?
Yes.
Then trust me to handle it. That night, Jake made phone calls. A lot of them. To Marcus, to Samuel, to presidents of clubs across 3 states. The message was simple. Damon Reeves had threatened a child. The line had been crossed. By morning, the plan was in motion. The 4th week brought federal intervention. The FBI, having received tips from multiple sources about Damon Reeves's activities, raided 4 of his properties simultaneously. They found weapons, drugs, evidence of human trafficking, and a hit list with Caleb's name at the top. Reeves was arrested again, this time without bail. His lawyer couldn't save him from federal charges that came with mandatory minimums. He's going away for life, Detective Williams told the Torres family when he came to deliver the news. Victor's already pleading out to avoid the death penalty. The entire Scorpion organization is done. What about the others? Jake asked. Reeves didn't act alone. We arrested 17 more people in the raids. The few we didn't get have scattered. They're not going to risk coming after Caleb now. Too much heat, too much attention. Williams looked at Caleb. You're safe, son. It's over. Caleb didn't know what to do with that information. Safe. He'd been running for so long, looking over his shoulder, ready to bolt at any moment. What did you do when the danger was gone? How do you feel? Sandra asked after Williams left. I don't know, Caleb admitted. Relieved? Scared? I don't know. Scared of what? That something else will go wrong. That this won't last. That I'll wake up and be back in that warehouse, and all of this will have been a dream. Sandra pulled him into a gentle hug, mindful of his still healing injuries. This is real, baby. We're real. Your room is real. Your family is real. And we're not going anywhere. The 5th week, Caleb started school. Millbrook High was overwhelming. Hundreds of students, loud hallways, teachers who expected him to know things he'd never learned. But Marcus was there, sitting in the parking lot during school hours. And Riley had told everyone in her 2nd grade class that her brother was a hero, which meant every kid in school had heard the story by lunchtime.
You're the guy who took bullets for a kid,
A girl named Emma said in his English class.
That's insane.
It was just... Caleb trailed off, not knowing how to explain.
Just the bravest thing anyone in this town has ever done,
Emma finished.
You're kind of famous, you know.
He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be normal. But normal wasn't an option when news crews had covered the story, when national media had interviewed Jake and Sandra, when over 1,000 bikers had stood vigil for him. At lunch, Caleb sat alone in the cafeteria, overwhelmed and anxious. Then a senior named Tyler sat down across from him. My dad rides with the Iron Brotherhood, Tyler said by way of introduction. He was at the hospital. Said you were the real deal. I just did what anyone would do. No, you did what most people wish they were brave enough to do. Tyler opened his lunch bag. Anyway, you don't have to sit alone. We've got a table by the windows. Bunch of us whose parents are in the club. You're welcome to join. Caleb looked across the cafeteria at the table Tyler indicated. 6 students waved at him, welcoming and genuine. Okay, Caleb said. Yeah, okay. For the first time in 3 years, he ate lunch with friends. The 6th week brought Thanksgiving. Sandra insisted on a big dinner: turkey, stuffing, all the traditional foods. She invited Marcus, Dorothy, Samuel, and the dozen other bikers who'd become part of their extended family. "I don't know how to do this," Caleb confessed to Jake while they set up extra tables in the backyard. "Do what?" "This. Family holidays. Being grateful. Having people." Jake set down the folding chair he was carrying. "You know what I'm grateful for this year?" "What?" "That a skinny 17-year-old kid was brave enough to save my family. That he was strong enough to survive bullets and surgery. And that he was humble enough to accept love when we offered it."
Jake's voice got rough.
"You changed our lives, Caleb. You gave me my daughter back. You gave Sandra peace. You gave Riley a brother. So yeah, you know how to do this. You're already doing it." At dinner, they went around the table saying what they were thankful for. When it was Caleb's turn, he looked at the faces surrounding him: Sandra, Jake, Riley, Marcus, Samuel, Dorothy, all these people who'd become his family. "I'm thankful for second chances," he said quietly, "and for people who don't give up on you." Riley squeezed his hand under the table. The 7th week, Caleb's physical therapy graduated to the next level. His shoulder was healing well, the range of motion improving. His therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Claire, pushed him hard. "You're young," she said. "Your body wants to heal. Let it." "It hurts." "Pain means you're alive. Pain means you're getting stronger." After therapy one day, Jake took Caleb to the Iron Brotherhood clubhouse. It was a large building on the edge of town, with motorcycles parked out front and the sound of classic rock drifting from inside. "Time you met the full club," Jake said. "Official introduction." Inside, 30 bikers stopped what they were doing when Caleb walked in. Then, as one, they stood up. The club president, a man named Ray with more gray in his beard than black, approached Caleb. "Caleb Marsh," Ray said formally. "The Iron Brotherhood owes you a debt we can never repay. You saved the family of our brother. You showed courage beyond your years. And you survived when you shouldn't have." He pulled out a leather vest, full patch, not prospect. On the back was the Iron Brotherhood logo. On the front, over the heart, a special patch, a shield with a wolf. "This doesn't make you a member," Ray said. "You're too young for that. But this makes you family. This makes you protected. This makes you ours." He held out the vest. "You earned this with blood.
We hope you'll wear it with pride."
Caleb's hands shook as he took the vest. It was heavier than he expected, the leather soft and worn. He put it on slowly, and it fit like it was made for him. The clubhouse erupted in cheers. Bikers clapped him on the back, shook his hand, pulled him into rough hugs. Marcus had tears in his eyes. Samuel nodded approval. Dorothy kissed his cheek and called him grandson. "How do you feel?" Jake asked later as they rode home on Jake's Harley, Caleb wearing his new vest. "Like I belong," Caleb said, the wind in his face, the rumble of the engine beneath him. "Like I finally belong." The 8th week brought Christmas. Riley insisted on decorating a tree that was too big for the living room. Sandra baked cookies until the house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Jake strung lights on the roof and complained about the cold. On Christmas Eve, Sandra gave Caleb an envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. Adoption papers.
"We can't file these until you're 18,
Sandra said. "Legal requirement. But I wanted you to see them. Wanted you to know that the day you turn 18, if you're willing, we'd like to make this official. Not guardianship. Adoption. Real family." Caleb stared at the papers. Torres. His name would be Caleb Torres. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Jake said. I don't need to think about it. Caleb looked up, his eyes wet. Yes. When I turn 18, yes. Riley, who'd been eavesdropping from the stairs, screamed with joy and came running. Christmas morning brought presents, practical things like clothes and school supplies, but also a guitar that Caleb had mentioned wanting to learn, and a helmet for when he was ready to ride his own motorcycle someday. You're really going to teach me? Caleb asked Jake. When you're healed and ready, yeah. Every man should know how to ride. That afternoon, they visited his mother's grave. Sandra had suggested it gently, not pushing, just offering. Caleb had said yes. The cemetery was quiet, snow dusting the headstones. Jennifer Marsh's grave was simple, just her name and dates. Caleb stood there for a long time, not speaking. I found a family, Mom, he finally said. A good one. The kind that shows up. The kind that stays. He paused. I wish you could have been that for me. I wish things had been different. But I'm okay now. I'm going to be okay. Sandra stood back, giving him privacy, but close enough that he knew he wasn't alone. I forgive you, Caleb whispered. I forgive you for choosing the pills. I forgive you for leaving. And I'm going to live the life you couldn't. I'm going to be happy. They left flowers on the grave, white roses that Sandra had bought. As they walked back to the car, Caleb felt lighter, like he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying for 3 years. The 9th week, Caleb testified before the grand jury. Damon Reeves sat 20 feet away, his scarred face impassive, his eyes cold. Caleb met that gaze without flinching. Can you identify the man who shot at you and the Torres family? The prosecutor asked. Yes, that's him. Damon Reeves. And you're certain? I'm certain. I saw his face through the SUV window. I saw him aim the gun. I watched him fire. That's the man who tried to kill an 8-year-old girl. Reeves's lawyer objected, tried to discredit Caleb's testimony, brought up his history of running away and living on the streets. Isn't it true you were homeless at the time of the shooting? The lawyer asked. Yes. And isn't it true you have a criminal record? No, I've never been arrested. But you were living illegally, working under the table, avoiding authorities. I was surviving, Caleb said, his voice steady. I was 17 years old, running from abuse, trying to stay alive. And when I saw a child in danger, I didn't think about my legal status or my employment situation. I thought about saving her life. The jury's faces showed what they thought of that answer. Reeves was indicted on 47 counts. His trial was scheduled for spring. The 10th week, Caleb turned 18. Sandra threw him a party, not huge, just close family and friends. The Iron Brotherhood showed up with a cake shaped like a motorcycle. Riley gave him a scrapbook she'd made, filled with photos from the last 3 months. So we never forget, she explained. So you always remember you're my brother. At midnight, when the party was over and the guests had left, Sandra pulled out the adoption papers. You're an adult now, she said. Legally, you can make your own decisions. So I'm asking, do you want to be our son? Not guardianship, not foster care. Our son. Legally, officially, permanently. Caleb looked at the papers, at Sandra's hopeful face, at Jake standing behind her with his hand on her shoulder, at Riley peeking around the corner even though she was supposed to be in bed. Where do I sign? He asked. They filed the papers the next day. 6 weeks later, a judge made it official. Caleb Marsh became Caleb Torres, legally and permanently part of the family that had chosen him. The 11th week brought the start of the Iron Brotherhood's annual charity run, a ride to raise money for foster care reform. Caleb had suggested it, and the club had embraced the idea enthusiastically. "We ride for the kids who fall through the cracks," Ray announced at the clubhouse. "For the ones the system fails. For the ones who need someone to show up and give a damn." Over 500 bikers participated. They raised $100,000 in donations. The local news covered it. State legislators took notice, and Caleb, riding beside Jake on his own bike now that he'd healed enough, felt like he was doing something that mattered. The 12th week, Millbrook High held a special assembly. The principal, a stern woman named Dr. Morrison, stood at the podium and talked about courage and sacrifice and what it meant to be a hero. Then she called Caleb to the stage.
"Caleb Torres," she said, "this school, this community, this entire county knows what you did. You saw danger and you ran toward it. You saw a child in need and you became her shield. Because of your actions, Riley Torres is alive today. Because of your courage, a criminal organization has been dismantled. Because of your testimony, dangerous people are going to prison." She handed him a plaque. It was simple, engraved with the school logo and the words, "For extraordinary courage and selfless sacrifice." "We're proud to have you as a student," Dr. Morrison said, "and we're honored to call you one of our own."
The entire school stood up and applauded. Caleb, overwhelmed, looked out at the sea of faces and saw Emma cheering in the front row, Tyler whistling from the back, teachers he barely knew clapping with genuine pride. He'd spent 3 years being invisible. Now he was seen, really seen, and it didn't scare him anymore. That spring, Damon Reeves was convicted on all 47 counts. Victor took a plea deal for life without parole. The Scorpion organization was officially dissolved. And Caleb, sitting in the courtroom between Sandra and Jake, watched justice happen. "How do you feel?" the victim's advocate asked him afterward. "Safe," Caleb said. "For the first time in my life, I feel safe." Summer brought graduation parties for the seniors Caleb had befriended. He was technically still a junior. Too many missed classes meant he needed another year, but he didn't mind. He had time now. He had a future. Riley turned 9 with a party that included half her class and approximately 30 bikers who treated her like a princess. She asked for a motorcycle helmet as a present, pink with unicorns, because Caleb had promised to teach her to ride when she was old enough. "Not until you're at least 16, Sandra said firmly.
"That's 7 whole years."
7 safe years, Jake corrected. Caleb watched them bicker, a smile on his face. This was family. The bickering, the love, the safety of knowing tomorrow would come, and they'd all be there for it. 1 year after the shooting, the Iron Brotherhood held a memorial ride. Not for those who died, mercifully no one had, but for those who'd been saved. For Riley, for Sandra, for the future that Caleb's courage had protected. Over 1,000 bikers showed up, the same ones who'd stood vigil at the hospital, plus hundreds more who'd heard the story and wanted to be part of something meaningful. They rode through Millbrook in formation, engines thundering, chrome gleaming in the sunlight. At the front of the pack rode Jake and Caleb, side by side, father and son. Riley watched from the sidewalk, Sandra's arm around her shoulders, and waved until her arm got tired. That night, as Caleb lay in bed in his room with the blue comforter and Riley's drawings on the wall, he thought about the last year, about bullets and surgery and nightmares, about finding family in unexpected places, about learning that running away sometimes meant running toward the only thing that mattered. He took out his mother's locket, still on his nightstand where he could see it, and opened it to her picture.
"I did it, Mom," he whispered. "I stopped running. I found people worth staying for. I found home."
Then he put the locket away, turned off the light, and went to sleep. Not because he was exhausted, not because he was hiding, but because tomorrow would come, and he had people to wake up for.
Downstairs, Jake and Sandra sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder.
"You think he's going to be okay?"
Sandra asked. "I think he's going to be better than okay," Jake said. "I think he's going to be extraordinary."
"He already is."
"Yeah, he already is." Outside, 1,000 miles away, other runaway kids slept in warehouses and under bridges, convinced they were invisible, convinced nobody cared. But because of Caleb's story, because of the news coverage, the social media posts, the attention paid to foster care reform, some of them were finding help. Some of them were being seen. One act of courage, rippling outward like waves. One boy who stopped running and started living. One family who chose love over biology. And somewhere in Millbrook, on a quiet street with a house that always had the lights on, a 17-year-old former runaway slept peacefully, surrounded by people who would take bullets for him just as readily as he'd taken bullets for them. Because that's what family does. Real family. The kind that shows up when bullets fly and stays when you stop running. The kind that sees you when you're invisible and loves you when you're broken. The kind that turns a throwaway kid into a protected son, a homeless ghost into a seen brother, a scared survivor into someone brave enough to finally believe he deserves the good things life offers. Caleb Marsh, Caleb Torres, had learned the hardest lesson, that being brave enough to accept love requires more courage than taking bullets. And he'd learned that some families aren't born. They're forged in fire and sealed with sacrifice, and built on the foundation of people who refuse to give up on you. He'd stopped running. He'd found his pack. And he'd never be invisible again.